under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. To see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the minutes from the meeting held on March 13th, 2023. Anyone like to make a motion on the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Discussion on the minutes from March. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Citizens' comments. Is there anybody here who would like to speak tonight? Yeah, Frank?
My name is Frank Elduca. I am a citizen from Bethel and also Board of Selectmen. We'd like to thank you for your hard work. I'd like to thank the kids for participating and encouraging everyone to do their very best. Thank you for all of that.
Thank you, Frank. Anybody else, any other citizens who would like to comment tonight? All right, we'll move to board member comments. Seeing none. I don't have anything for report tonight. Committee board meetings. Our next meeting is tentatively Monday, April 24th. That will be here. The next Education Committee meeting is Thursday, May 25th at the Norway Bank Conference Room. Yeah, and we'll there's an agenda item later on our next board meeting, so we'll discuss that then. The next facilities meeting is Thursday, April 13th. Location to be determined. Do you have an update on that?
I think it's probably, no, it's not finalized yet, but I think it's going to be in the central office, upstairs in the superintendent's office.
And the next Region 9 board meeting will be Wednesday, May 3rd at Region 9. And at this point, we'll go to some committee reports. Start with Stephanie and the Education Committee.
Yes, the Education Committee did not meet this month, so I wrote the report.
And Marcy's not here, so that would be...
Nothing to report.
Okay. And Aaron, Finance Committee.
The Finance and Negotiations Committee met last Tuesday, and we completed our work to the FY24 SAD 44 General Fund budget. We will be presenting the General Fund budget this evening, along with the adult debt budget and additional public meeting warrant articles. We also have a number of items on the agenda that we will be recommending approval of.
Thank you. And Region 9, I see Mr. Clanton here. And Roberta, actually.
That's pretty quick. I didn't expect you to get to me that fast. Roberta's here also from Region 9. Some exciting things happening at Region 9. Wednesday morning we have our National Technical Honor Society induction. 23 students being inducted, which actually is like 18% of our total student population at Region 9, which is pretty impressive. 3 of those students come from SAD 44. Alan White's in our computer technology program. Isabella Brassard is in fire science, and Scarlett Quick's in our outdoor skills program. So we've got about 125 students right now at Region 9. What's exciting is that we already have about 195 signed up for next year. So things are really moving there. I want to remind you, our next board meeting is May 3rd, but that's also at 6 o'clock at Region 9 is our regional budget meeting. That's when we approve, or disapprove, but approve the budget for the coming year. So let's see, I mentioned the National Technical Honor Society. That induction is Friday morning. Dave, any other announcements that I should make?
Just to get there and be ready. You can make other announcements if you choose to do so.
I got to say, I always enjoy reading the looking back column in the Bethel Citizen, and a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, it noted that 30 years ago we hired Dwayne Craig as the new Region 9 director. He was superintendent here at that time. And shortly thereafter, we hired Dan Hart, and he was the counselor here. We hired him for our student services coordinator. We've had really good luck with these second-hand administrators that we have hired from SAD 44. And so we were pleased to be able to select Dr. Dave Murphy as our next adult ed director. He's going to work part-time for us, and I hope you don't mind me telling the folks, but we're kind of excited. We think that that's got a lot of potential for us. So we're looking forward to it. For you? Roberta, did I miss anything?
Oh, probably. I'd just like to share, and I apologize for not having enough copies, but so if you guys can share a little bit. As of the last day in March, we had student lists, or potential students, who have signed up for Region 9. I just thought it would be interesting for you if you could just kind of share a little bit and see what the numbers are. It's been very quick intro. I guess 12 o'clock up at the As you can see, the numbers are really high, and obviously we know that until September sometime, we're not going to get a full number because students drop out, we get more students and so forth. And I just wanted to share with you some of the programs that we have and also what the numbers were, and I guess they've increased, right?
Did I miss? Those are numbers as of the end of March.
Right.
They've grown some since then.
Right.
And they also don't include the intros to CTE.
No.
However many those we take.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
it's pretty exciting.
So, as you can see, we have goodly numbers here. And down at the very bottom is the intro to CTE, which is careers technical education. That is a new program. It replaces one that we used to have and haven't had in a couple of years. And what it's basically for introductory students from grade 9 if the school send them, or grade 10, the ones that have not been at Region 9 before. And it will consider introductory, automotive, plumbing, etc., and so forth. We need a teacher for that, or an instructor. So if anyone knows of somebody who would like to do that, we'd love it. But so far, we are at the point where we think we can get as many as 40 students in there. So that would be great, not only for the students, but also for recruitment for the future. And as you can see here, some of these numbers, culinary arts being one, 28 students is a little hard for an instructor to handle. So we need to have an educational tech for the culinary arts. So we're going to be hiring an educational tech to work with the culinary arts person. CNA is up to 21 from, I think, 8 or something this past year. And these numbers here, total by high school, are just basically what were true as of the end of March. And all students have had the opportunity, I believe, to come through the program and see all of the programs that we offer. So we're going to be hiring some extra people, and we also have building construction. And at this point in time, we're looking also to recruit a building instructor person, because one of the people in outdoor skills is going to hopefully become full-time. That was a part-time program last year. So again, some of these numbers are up in the air, and also some of the decisions that are going to be made are up in the air. If we don't have enough students, we don't hire the staff of a particular instructor. But right now, we're very excited about the kids and who have come and agreed to at least sign on initially for Region 9 next year. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn and Ms. Taylor. All right, with that, we'll pass it to Dave for the superintendent's report.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Since the last meeting, we've had some appointments, and just want to go over those with you. We received we have a transfer of Kelly Stone from school bus driver to full-year custodian. Schedule B appointments: Telstar High School assistant softball Stacy Knight, Telstar Middle School track coach Haley Andrews, assistant baseball coach Josh Elliott, student council co-advisors Haley Andrews, Renee Bouchard-Charette, and Deb Doyle. No resignations since the last meeting. That's good news. And we have a couple of agenda items later on as well. In your packet, you received a copy of a letter that I sent out from Scott Cole about some school supplies that we received from the school that his sister works at in Springfield, Indian Orchard Elementary School. We received about over 200 little boxes that had pencils and Sharpies and glue and all kinds of things in it, which we'll be distributing out based on, I'll have a conversation with the building administrators to figure out what grade levels those would best go to. But Scott, please pass on our thanks to your sister. And I guess that was from Staples, right? They came from Staples.
Yeah, it was some sort of a, student support program. And
Nice.
Somehow 4 or 5 boxes were laying in the building somewhere, and they had no purpose, no destination. My sister grabbed them.
So we'll put them to good use.
Yeah.
Thank you. Also, as you saw probably in the newspaper, Maine did release an additional amount of state funding. Unfortunately, as a minimum receiver, we did not get any additional funding because of that release of additional funds. Other places did. But we do have more money in our budget this year for state aid, so that's good news, so we're happy about that. PTA updates. I know Destiny is here. Destiny, did you want to say anything about the Woodstock PTA?
Yeah, the Woodstock PTA is going great. We actually have our next meeting tomorrow at Woodstock at 6. Our fundraising is going well. We have the bottle drive that always takes place at the Greenwood Woodstock Frank Pond Dump. So if you ever have bottles that need, to be taken in, you're welcome to drop them off and use that as a giant fundraiser. But we recently just had the basket bingo at the Lot Mills Legion Hall, and we did over $3,000. So that was really awesome. Yeah, everything's going really well.
Sounds good. Any updates on Crescent Park?
Yes, I can share. So it is hard to believe, but we are kind of winding down our PTA season. We have we canceled last week, but we are going to meet on Wednesday of this week. We'll meet again in May, and that will kind of wrap up our year. We're in the middle of a fundraiser. We partnered with Norway Candle Company out of Norway, Maine, and are selling candles. There's 6 different scent options. So that wraps up on Friday, and then our next 2 big events are planning teacher appreciation and the field day at the end of the year. So that'll be our focus between now and then, and everything's going well. We've had a great turnout this year. Still meeting in person and then via Zoom, and it's been a good option for people that can't make it to the building for whatever reason for childcare. So we've been able to maintain a really good turnout each meeting. So
Thank you. Mr. Kenny?
Sure. We met last week for the middle school, high school PTA. We worked on, to the end of this month, we have our slated officers for May elections. We just finished planning out teacher appreciation, and they are also working on, testing supplies. They're doing testing kits for the kids during MEA testing. So gift bags for the kids with some gum, hard candy, bottle of water.
Sharpies, glue,
Not their laptops for testing, but supplies to get through testing, supports, and then we'll have our elections coming up in May at the May meeting. And then that will end our PTA year for this year and move forward for next year.
Thank you.
There will be Rebel Gear for sale, so we'll put an online link if anybody still needs to get, a Telstar sweatshirt. So.
Thank you. Thank you. By the way, I just want to mention Frank introduced himself as a selectman, former school board member, very active, and good to have him back.
I got excited for a minute there. I thought you were going to come take a seat. And we also have some candidates here tonight. So if you wouldn't mind, if you're running for a board, if you want to stand up and introduce yourself, that'd be great.
My name is Matt Mallon. I'm Newry. Transplanted here a couple of years ago after a career as a chiropractor. I'm originally from South Boston. Lived in Revere for 28 years, as well as my wife Brenda White. And anxious to be part of the community and part of the decision-making for the community.
Nice to meet you, Matt. Thank you. South Boston, St. Patrick's Day just went past, but we'll be in touch next year. So, thank you. Destiny?
Again, Destiny.
Yes.
I'm also running for the school board, so for the Greenwood spot that's opening now.
Anyone
Super
else?
excited about that.
Thank you, Destiny. Okay. I also just wanted to provide a quick update. As some of you have been on the board for a few years know, back when COVID hit, I talked about wanting to do a Danny Champion of the World recording on online for our kids, and it was a slow process, but I'm happy to tell you that it was completed and put up a couple of weeks ago, and had some really great responses. And it's funny because a lot of the people that I've heard from are people who I read it to when they were in elementary school. So interesting stuff. And we're planning on doing some kind of a follow-up on that. Stay tuned. It'll be a little bit different, but I think it'll be fun. So we're looking forward to it. And it's amazing how many kids I've bumped into over the past couple of weeks who said, oh, I'm watching Danny Champion of the World. So it's good. And by the way, if you're not familiar with that, that's Roald Dahl's probably least famous book, but I happen to think it's his best one. So check it out. Last day of school is Friday, June 16th, and that's a half a day of school. So I just wanted to pass that on. And I think that does it. Superintendent report.
All right, thank you. Old business that I'm aware of. New business is the Finance Committee would like to present the budget for next year. I think Dave has a quick introduction, and then the Finance Committee will go through everything we've been working on the last few weeks, and there'll be an agenda item on that later on.
So I want to thank the Finance Committee. They've actually been meeting pretty regularly over the past 6 or 7 weeks, every Thursday night to look at all the different cost centers and all the revenue and the expenditures and everything else associated with the general fund budget, as well as the adult ed budget and some other articles that they'll be asking you to take a look at later tonight for inclusion on the public hearing. At first glance, when you look at next year's budget to budget, it's actually up over 10%, 10.39%, and that looks like a huge amount for an increase. As some of you know, if you've come to our public budget meetings in the past, our special education budget has peaks and valleys. It depends on the students that we have enrolled at that particular time and what their IEPs call for special education support. We've had a big influx of special education students over the past several years, but this year in particular, we had 13 students come in with IEPs that required additional special services. We're looking at next year, we have more kids who are transitioning into the school district that are also going to probably need some additional services. So one of the biggest areas that you're going to see as you look through the budget is special education. And then, of course, you have your basic kinds of increases, your negotiated raises, your increased costs for fuel and electricity, insurances, materials and supplies, contracted services, a lot of built-in things like we're all experiencing at home. The good news is that if you look at, and you'll see this later, but at the end of the day, the actual increase to the local taxpayers is substantially less than that, and that's due largely to the fact that we're receiving $431,857 in revenue, which is reimbursement for some of those special education students who are here on a tuition basis. So if we have a student, for example, that's coming here from Gilead or Upton or Hanover, unorganized territories, Andover, anybody who's paying a tuition that's coming in, if there are special education costs associated with that particular student, we have to budget for that. But then we also budget revenue, which offsets that. So when the Finance Committee is going through their total budget, you're going to see a 10.39% increase, and then you're also going to see later on a much, much lower impact to the local taxpayer, and I won't steal the thunder of the Finance Committee, who's going to share that good news after Mark Hutchins gives you all the bad news.
You just stole half of my thunder.
Standing joke. Yeah, that's only half. I'm going to make it a little bit easier on you. And then we'll talk a little bit about the adult education budget when we get there too. And but I just want to commend the Finance Committee for the time, effort, and energy that they put into this. Also to the administrators who really worked hard on this budget, and they did that in cooperation with their staff. So by the time it gets to this, it's gone through lots of hoops, lots of steps, and we're hopeful that tonight, you'll take a good listen to the Finance Committee and support their recommendations.
Great, thank you. So if you look at the packets, did everybody get a packet?
Is this what we're calling the
Yes. That's it. So if you look at the first page in that, this basically sums up what Dave just talked about in terms of the increases that to the overall budget and then the increase to the taxpayer. So line 1, total general fund expenditure budget, you can see is up to 10.39% that Dave mentioned. Again, that's due in large part to the special education budget seeing a large increase. Again, as Dave mentioned, the good news is on line number 2, you'll also see an increase of $467,432, and that is an increase in state aid that we will be receiving. And then you'll also see an increase below that in line 3, and that's $443,680, and that's an increase in the revenue that Dave mentioned. And I believe, I don't know if it's in this packet, but a sheet was sent out via email on Friday that included how those revenue projections will come up with.
It should have been on the very top of your packet. It's your revenue income sheet, and basically shows how we're going to be covering the cost of the budget.
So again, lines 2 and 3 are revenue that we expect to receive. Line 4 is the carryover from this year's budget that we anticipate being able to put towards next year's budget. You can see that's the same as we did last year. Being able to put that money is in large part due to unexpended amounts from the current budget, due in large part to COVID and other things that have allowed us to not expend the entire budget. Line 5 is the total revenue from above. Line 6 is what we are required to raise as taxpayers in order to receive the state aid. Our budget, unfortunately, is much larger than that, so it's really meaningless to us, but in order to receive the state aid, that's what we have to raise. Line 7 is the additional that we're asking for, again, to meet our budget needs. And line 8 is the total. Line 9 is the adult ed budget, which is funding itself this year, so that's why there's nothing there. And line 10 is the change in the local share, and that's where the good news comes in, with the 4.22% being the increase that the taxpayers will see this year. So any questions on that page? Again, there'll be a lot more detail coming up, but that's just kind of an overview of. Okay. The next page, next 2 pages, break down the impact to the taxpayers by town. The second page is basically related to the funding formula, and that was voted in 5 years ago. We're on year 5 of that, and that was something that went to the voters, that was approved by the taxpayers to be implemented to spread the share based on 90% valuation and 10% student head count. And then that changes over the years. Is that accurate?
Correct. It shifts next year to 8812.
And again, this was approved in, I think, 2017 by the taxpayers. So that is what the second page is. The third page is a little clearer and shows you the percent increase that each town will see individually. Any questions, Scott?
The formula phase in, are we going into the 5th year, or are we in the 5th year now?
I think we're in the 5th year.
Going to the
This coming year is the 5th year.
FY24.
So this is the end of the 4th
Correct.
year. It represents shifting away from
Correct.
full value base.
Right.
We're shifting away from equitable treatment, but we'll get to that another day.
It had been 100% valuation prior to this, right?
Right, and there's a lot of significance to all that. I'll just say real quick, I ran some numbers on the current budget, and the cost to the community in a sense, or but if everything was done by value basis, which is how the property taxes are portioned by value. If every property in the school district was being taxed at the same tax rate, we have 4 different tax rates, 4 different towns now. Used to be uniform tax rate. Right now, the shift to Newry has a high value compared to the number of students to the ski area and the development related to the ski area. And that shift of money is about $400,000 that is being redirected. Woodstock and Bethel bear it. Greenwood is almost a wash in terms of what it would have been if it was all value-based versus the hybrid formula. That $400,000 represents money out of our community. Probably 90% or more of ownership of property in Newry is out-of-state ownership. Mainwide, which is more Mainwide is Greenwood, Woodstock, Bethel. It's more like a 45 to 50% out-of-state ownership of taxable property in Maine, Mainwide. But Newry is a very, very special place. This is nothing against the people of Newry, but I really think we ought to move. Look, in the future, I'd like to be able to talk about the reverting back to the uniform tax rate for school purposes in our region. And I don't want to belabor it tonight, but that's where I am. You know I am. That's where I was when it all came into practice. I don't think it was the right move. The communities voted, I think, 3 times before it actually got pushed through by about 19, 20 votes, something like that, very, very close. But anyway, we're not practicing equity the way we do taxes now. We certainly wouldn't treat our students different depending on where they came from, which town. So that's my point. Let me know, Mr. Chairman, when I can be on the agenda for a future. I can do more of a tutorial on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, and I don't even know, you have more background on that, where that process even begins.
As Scott knows from the conversations that he was involved in, as we all were, this really stemmed from the Newry withdrawal effort, and it was a way to kind of end that conversation in a way that people felt they could support. And it's phased in. It goes from 90-10 to 88-12 to 85-15, and over a period of time. And it was a shift away from 100% valuation. It actually, Scott's correct, it took a number of times before it was passed, and then it was voted on across the district. So any change, it would be a process that would have to be undertaken in order to have the change reconsidered again. But anyway, down the road.
Yeah. Any other questions on the impact to the towns?
I just wanted to comment, we're actually pretty lucky to have the formulas we do. The school district I was involved in New Hampshire is less than 10% based on valuation and over 90% based on student population. So Newry would be paying.
But we're not in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I know.
But if you lose Newry's money, you're in big trouble.
No, but I think
Because we have hardly any kids.
Right, but we're not, we can get into another night, but the actions that led, like Dave said, the withdrawal discussion, this and that would have never happened without that massive value that let a relatively few people dictate terms to a much larger community. We can talk another night. Obviously, you've got a different opinion on sensing, but I'd love a chance to bring you over to equity. It's all about equity. That's all I'm saying. Thank you very much.
I could just say one thing on this too. I have communicated with all the town managers, and I think it's safe to say that people were happy to get the numbers. I think it's really very easy to say that Vernon Maxfield was very happy to get the numbers down in Woodstock with a 3.79% increase. So again, I think a lot of work went into this to try to get that number down to something that was going to be affordable to the taxpayers.
All right, with that, I'll pass it off to Mark, who's going to run you through the next page in the packet.
Yeah, this is the summary by category of the cost increases. As a new board member, I was assigned the task of presenting all the bad news. So that's what I'm presenting here. If you go to the bottom line, you see it's up 10.4% approximately. And as Dr. Murphy said, it's very much largely related to special ed. If you go up to line 2, That's up almost 53%, and it accounts for almost 60% of the total increase in our budget needs. Line 3 is over 20%, but it's a big percentage, but it's a very small number. It's, increase of $10,000, so it is not as bad as it looks. Line 9, buildings and grounds, is up almost 13%. That in part is due to increasing the potential salary for a supervisor that we haven't got, and we haven't gotten any qualified applications for. We're hoping we might. It's also due to increased energy costs. All the other increases are largely based on salary and benefits, virtually all. And it's those are things that were negotiated previously in terms of salaries. So it's, with the exception of special ed, it's a pretty carefully laid out budget. Anyone has any questions?
So the next page breaks it into 2 categories. So out of a total budget of just over $14 million, 56.3% is salaries, 18.2% is benefits, and then what we consider fixed costs is 17.5%. So things like utilities, liabilities, and worker comp insurance, special ed contracts, and then other programs that we have committed to invest to in, like North Star. So those 3 things, salaries, benefits, and fixed costs, make up 92% of the budget. So that leaves 8% for us to work with as we're working through this process and adjust. So that includes things like in contingencies, transportation, repairs, parts and tires, and capital renewals. So 8% of it are things that are not fixed costs. I'd like to thank the Finance Committee members for the time.
Aaron,
Am I skipping?
Yeah, Dave's going to go
Do you want to do
over
this one, or do you want me to do it?
Either way, I'm ready to do it. You can do it if you want.
It's all yours.
Okay. I'd like to thank the Finance Committee members for the time and effort that they devoted to thoroughly reviewing the different cost centers associated with the proposed FY24 budget. It's my pleasure to provide you with an oversight of the major changes to each of the cost centers. These overviews highlight both areas of increase and decrease. Aside from rare exceptions, the overall increase to the budget is due to negotiated salary and benefit increases, as well as significant increases in the special education costs associated with the identified needs of our students. As Dave mentioned, and you know, we are required to provide the services that are identified in each individual education plan that is developed for these children. As you're also aware, the revenue side of the budget will also reflect reimbursement for some of these services by towns who tuition their students to us. Those towns are responsible for all costs associated with the services provided to the students who reside there. In addition, the budget reflects increased fuel and insurance costs, as well as escalating costs of materials and labor from outside contractors. Please know that there are many other lines that had smaller increases or decreases. This focus is only on the more substantial changes to each cost center between FY23 and FY24. Then we'll look at the next page where you've got the overall special education budget title. Before we review the major changes to each cost center, I'd like to highlight some aspects of the proposed budget. Overall, the special education budget is up $790,785. More than half of that increase is salaries and benefits at $474,847. The remaining is contractual services at $315,938. Total salaries and benefits of the FY24 budget are up $791,478. As noted, special ed has an increase of $474,847. All other departments reflect an increase of $316,631. The total budget increase, as mentioned, is 10.39%. which translates to $1,328,584. If you subtract salaries and benefits at $791,478, and special ed contractual services at $315,938. The remaining increases to the proposed budget are $221,168. You want to turn to the next packet. We'll go through some of the changes. In Cost Center 1, instructional expenditures, there's an overall increase of $178,862. There's negotiated salaries and benefits, or negotiated changes, at $132,091 increase. For TMS North Star, there's a $10,000 increase, and this is building capacity to continue the program after the grant ends. The secondary learning alternative, which is CMCC and Edmonton courses, there's a $10,000 increase. Secondary education improvement, a $3,000 increase. The 4-H learning experience, which is an anticipated increase, is $10,000. And jobs for Maine grads is in the same position as North Star, where it has an increased contribution due to grants ending, and that has a $4,000 increase. And there's also a $5,000 increase to the instructional contingency. Cost Center 2, special education, has an overall increase of $790,785. The increase is primarily positions. Negotiated salaries and benefits have an increase of $456,910. Out-of-district contracted services have an increase of $117,483. Special education private tuition at the elementary level reflects an increase of $80,909. Special education private tuition at secondary level has an increase of $7,100. Occupational therapy at the elementary level has an increase of $90,700. And PT contracted services have an increase of $33,450. And then we have contracted English language has an increase of $7,120. With Cost Center 3, vocational instruction, the overall increase is $10,407. This is our assigned share of Region 9 assessment. The budget-to-budget increase from FY23 to FY24 is 20%. Cost Center 4, other instruction, which is athletics and co-curricular, reflects an increase of $16,771, which is all in negotiated salaries and benefits. Cost Center 5, student support, is an overall increase of $53,394. There's a $46,941 increase with negotiated salaries and benefits. There's a $13,500 increase with the resiliency program. This is a new line, and this is attributed to program support. We also have a $3,400 increase in health service technology, which is the software program for the school nurse, and it was initially covered through COVID funds, but is now in the budget. Curriculum professional development has a decrease of $5,000. Some of these purchases were covered through the remaining ESSER 3 funds. And education development books falls into the same category and has a decrease of $4,250. Cost Center 6, system administration, overall has a $19,575 increase. There's a $6,817 increase to negotiated salaries and benefits, a $5,000 increase to board public relations. We also have a $9,300 increase in the central office tech service, which is server hosting rather than us purchasing a new server. Cost Center 7, school administration, the overall increase is $31,566. $36,166 increase to negotiated salaries and benefits, and this covers the principals, deans, secretaries. And then we have a $7,000 decrease in professional education services with the high school accreditation process. Cost Center 8, transportation, has a decrease overall of $1,215. There's a decrease of $8,643 in negotiated salaries and benefits. A $15,000 increase in transportation, or private transportation rather, and this is for RideSource rides. $2,349 decrease in vehicle insurance, $2,000 decrease in tech, a $2,000 increase in gasoline, a $6,400 increase in diesel fuel, $2,500 decrease in supplies, and a $7,500 decrease in bus repair parts. Cost Center 9, building, grounds, and maintenance. Overall, there's a $228,440 increase. There is an increase of $108,891 for negotiated salary and benefits and new position. This does cover the position partially for the coordinator of special projects. Emergency management training has a $6,500 increase. Property insurance is an increase of $5,980. District water and sewer fees has an increase of $9,176. Heating oil has an increase of $17,287. Electricity has increased for the district by $10,000. Pellets have increased $6,420. Biomass repairs at THS, which were repairs to the pellet boiler, was a $2,500 increase. District waste disposal fees have an increase of $3,366. District ground repairs have a $5,000 increase. District building repairs at THS have a $7,000 increase. District building repairs at CPS have a $4,000 increase. CPS and THS building and ground supplies have increased by $6,500. And the snow plowing for the district has increased $5,000. Debt service and interest has decreased by $6,583, and this is due to reduced principal amounts on projects like the track and water and sewer. And our 5-year capital renewal plan has increased $40,000, and this is a return to the FY22 level. This line was reduced in FY22 due to budget constraints. It's reserved for maintenance items identified in our 10-year replacement plan. Cost Center 10 debt service is $0, and Cost Center 11 other expenditures is $0 as well. The district does not have any expenses associated with these cost centers. Overall, the total increase to the proposed FY24 MSAB 44 general fund budget is $1,328,585. Thank you for taking the time to consider the specifics of each cost center. We hope that you found this information helpful and appreciate the board's support.
Questions on cost centers?
Just one quick, if I could just say one quick thing too. When you, again, just kind of remind people, when you look at the total increase in the budget, go back to that first page and look at the total amount of revenue that's also coming in, and that reduces that top number down to that 4.22%.
Scott?
Just first off, Dave and I spoke today, and I have a lot of questions more to understand versus to, it's not critique, more just, those questions would be better answered just talking to Dave in the office, or Dave and Deb, that kind of thing. But just a couple of these real quick. I see the Cost Center 1, North Star. Is that funded by a grant, or that's out of the general fund, or both?
A little bit of both.
Then my next question is, are we accounting, is the grant in here somewhere on the revenue sheet, grant receipts?
Okay, I can explain that. So the grant actually came through to the University of Maine. It was a $600,000, I think, 6-year grant. And that is slowly going away. This is actually the last year that it's in place. Lindsay Smith, who has, I think, done a couple of presentations over the past couple of years here, is the coordinator for that. So she's doing some fundraising on her own. And then, beginning a couple of years ago, we started putting money in the general fund budget to try to get some money up there so that we would be in a place to be able to continue the program with some additional fundraising. So the revenue is not with us. The revenue is with University of Maine.
So the district doesn't take custody of the revenue. I guess the cost are all the procurements for North Star embedded in Cost Center 1 as part of the $14.1 million, or is there
No, we're gradually working our way into taking that program over. So initially, all of it was coming out of the University of Maine / SAD 44 grant that we received from the Lerner Foundation. They were the fiscal agent of that. That was a long-term, well, like I said, a 5 or 6 year grant. When it went away, the board has made the determination that they want to see it be able to continue. They recognize they're not going to be able to fund the entire thing, so they wanted to build some money in each year and build that number up. And the recognition is also that as those cohorts continue to grow, there'll be a need for some donations. Norway Savings Bank, I think, just committed $20,000 a year.
So we're running a separate set of books for a separate fund for North Star.
The only fund that we have right now is in the general fund budget. We get billed for whatever that number was this year, 20,000 thereabouts. Remember?
UMO sends that bill.
Yes, University of Maine. 4-H Learning Center is actually the coordinator for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 20. Yeah. So we started putting money in, Scott. So there was 20,000 in this year. We're going to 30,000 next year. The actual cost of the program is significantly higher than that. So they know they're going to have to continue to seek additional grant money and or donations from different businesses in the community.
That's fine for now, Dave. Thank you for that.
It's not unlike what we've done in the past with like Mahoosic Arts. We set aside an amount of money that helps go towards funding a program. That money's in the budget. We get billed for that from the different groups, and then we pay that to them in terms of the services that they provide.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Under cost center 8, I see there's a $8,000 decrease. How'd you manage that?
So one of the things that we do is look at historical expenditures. So we go back and look at the additional, the previous couple of years worth of budgets. And we went back and looked at transportation and saw that there were some areas that we had budgeted, but we hadn't used all the funds.
Is that because your shifts can't get filled, or is it just a question of lack of demand or lack of need, or both?
It could be a combination of things. It could be things like you budgeted some money for replacing some parts, and we didn't need all those parts. Or we budgeted
the line changed in salaries and benefits. That's what's kind of.
Oh, yes. Okay, I'm sorry, Scott. I didn't have that part of
Oh,
it.
yeah, really. I guess I envision what the bus fleet and the drivers with certain liability
field
budget.
drivers.
Unfilled drivers, that's what we had in the budget before, and now we're not keeping those in there because.
You haven't used them?
Nope.
And there's been an operational decision that you don't need them. You don't need that. You don't need those hours.
We haven't
Correct.
used them for a number of years, so rather than carry it in the budget, it just didn't make sense to have it.
That's fine. Cost center 9, that is that number there, 108 increase. That's primarily the proposal to keep Dave on
That includes.
as a consultant.
Yeah, that
Not
includes
primarily.
that
Part
portion
of it is, but the brunt of that isn't. It's a piece of it.
For that piece of 108 is for
Exactly.
what's envisioned.
Yes.
Where's the rest of that? Where's the rest of the consultant's number? It's not in cost center 9.
No, it is.
It's all
I
there.
just mean that 108 isn't all the special coordinators.
No, I understand. Yeah, I got that.
Yeah,
part. I
but
just
that's
wanna
all
know where-
encompassed in that
Just want to
line.
know where it was.
It's right.
I think that's all I had. I'd like to get together with Deb sometime, and you guys more easy to get more geeky questions than it's really.
Sure.
Don't waste people's time here. Thank you.
I'd encourage you to attend some of our finance committee meetings too. I think you might find that.
I know, and I almost don't want to be obnoxious asking questions because it might get taken as criticism. It's not. And I know I got a kind of a forward stance sometimes. It's about knowledge. Questions are the root of knowledge, so I just like to understand that. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will come to a meeting. I am trying to dodge it. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Maggie?
Thanks. In the, sorry. I'm looking at line items.
Yep.
Oh, thank you. Page 6, line items. And I'm looking at the increase in resource room, teacher salary benefits, and also the contracted services. And I'm wondering if that is money that is set aside for potential positions, or if those are positions that are already filled, or if they're not already filled, do we have a plan on how we're going to fill those positions?
Yeah, great question. So when you look at resource room and you look at other kinds of support for special ed, what happens is a lot of times you'll have kids who are moving from elementary to middle school or middle school to high school. So you'll see some shifts because people follow, the programs actually follow the kids. So if we don't need the same number of teachers at the elementary level because you've had half a dozen kids move into middle school, you're going to see those kinds of spikes back and forth. The only positions that are in here are either positions that we currently have or that we know are coming based on our incoming kindergarten, pre-kindergarten kids. Jeannie has been in meetings all day today. I don't know, Jeannie, if you want to speak on that, but pretty much we know that we've added positions in here based on the needs that we know are coming. The question mark is who else is going to be coming that we haven't yet accounted for. And each year, I would say, for the past several years, we've seen an increased number of students who have come to the district, either starting school or transitioning in from a different school district that required services. If I could, Jeannie, is it okay? Yeah. Jeannie, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you summarized it really well. I think, Maggie, you had made a comment about contacted. Did you say something about contacted?
Basically, I'm just wondering, like, do we have the personnel to meet the need? That's what I'm wondering.
Okay.
And if we don't, how do we have strategies in place to find the personnel to meet the need?
You do
We
have.
do have all personnel in place now, knock on wood. And like David said, the account line does indicate that we just have some incoming needs that we know, so we need staff support for that.
Then we have that staff support.
We'll have to post for some of that for next year.
So that's what I guess that's my concern is, like, are we going to be able to find?
We have, I don't want to see you jinx me, but
Don't.
We've been able so far. We've been really lucky. People want to work here. I think that's the best part. So we, like I said, we're fully staffed right now in special ed. So knocking on this wood.
And we also have a $30,000 contingency line in special ed. Not that that's a lot of money these days, but there is some additional funding in there if we find out that we get some additional students. And, you know, we're planning for the future. So we could have a student right now that we know needs X, and that student could move sometime during the summer.
Yeah.
And if that money doesn't get expended, it becomes part of your carryover money for next year.
Thank you.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Scott?
I'm sorry, I have more, I can't. So, under cost center 3, the vocational,
Yes.
I'm actually looking at the summary, $60,974 total outlay. Is that the total payment?
That's the total amount that we pay. Starting, I don't know, a few years back, it used to, our contribution used to be much, much bigger than that.
It seems very small, actually.
Well, it's the money above and beyond what the state has already determined they need to contribute to Region 9. So the money used to come to us, we used to turn around and we used to cut the check to them.
So the
a few
state
years-
has taken over direct, or has moved towards a more of a direct subsidy.
Correct.
Of
And
the
then if they overexpend that, then we get billed whatever our percentage is. And their formula is based on two things. 50% of their formula is based on the number of students from Telstar who participate as a percentage of the total number of students who are there from the 3 sending schools. And then the other half is the other 50% is based on total number of kids in our high school as compared to the percentage of the total number of kids in high schools from Dirigo, Mountain Valley, and Telstar.
And that data is triggering a certain per student expenditure anywhere in Maine, or depending on the rate. So it's not based on the ability to pay, the local.
No, that's all based on Region 9's budget. So Region 9 determines a budget. That's what they're going to vote on in May.
Yeah.
And then the amount of money that's above and beyond gets distributed based on that formula that I just explained to the 3 different sending schools. And they have to make up their percentage of that amount, which is paid directly to Region 9 from, in our case, SAD 44.
When the state of Maine determines, as they look at the different vocational districts, I use the term, like regions, when they look at that, they get back to that, do they look at physical capacity? Is it purely driven by student counts?
I believe it's driven by program offerings, student counts, and yeah, pretty much that. And then it's applied to those 2 formulas that I mentioned. And that's what
This is just off what is the total budget of Region 9 per year, the annual outlay?
It's a little, I think it's, next year it's like, thank you, Deb.
Yeah, we're on track.
This is great. This is great.
She's good, I worked with her a long time.
That's right. So, next year, it's going to be $2,422,394. That's up from $2,022,000, so it's a 20% increase.
And the bulk of that state money, probably.
A lot of that is state subsidy. The state subsidy actually has gone from, well, some of it's state subsidy. It's gone from $1,592,000 to $1,896,000. And then the carryover funds, they're applying, they have a couple $100,000 in carryover. And so last year, the difference that the sending districts had to make up was $220,000. This year, it's $306,000.
That's fine, thank you very much.
$308,000.
That's all I want to know, thank you very much.
Any other questions on the cost centers? All right, next in the packet, I believe, is adult education.
So
Dave's going to run us through that.
Yeah, so adult education, the total budget for the proposed budget for this coming year is $131,887, and that's an increase of $4,732. We're going to see an increase of a whopping $529 from the state to help pay for that, so we're going up to $29,257. And we ran the adult ed program, we budgeted for the adult ed program all throughout COVID because we didn't know when COVID was going to go away and we were going to be able to start adult ed again. So we have actually built up a carryover fund in that adult ed program. And last year, we were able to apply adult ed carryover funds to supplement the state share to make up the entire budget. And so we didn't ask the taxpayers for any portion of that. This year, we're in a position to be able to do the same thing. So that 4.22% total overall impact to the local is helped by the fact that we're not having to ask for any additional local funding for the adult ed program. So basically, during COVID, we amassed a carryover amount over here, and for the past 2 years, we've been able to apply it to cover whatever the local share would have been. At the end of the day, we still will have a couple $100,000 in that carryover account. So at some point, and Deb and I do this all the time, we would look at this and say, okay, at some point you're probably not going to carry the whole thing over to cover the whole thing. You're going to start to ease it down so you don't get hit all of a sudden with having to raise all of it at one time. So, but the good news is your budget is $131,887, and between what we're getting from the state and what we're providing from our adult ed carryover, there's no impact to local taxpayers. And Julie is up and running, and I've gone down to see her 3 or 4 times in the last couple of months, and she's busy all the time, so I can vouch for her. Nice to have it back up and going forward.
Any questions on adult ed? All right, final page in the packet says article at the top. This is 2 warrants that the Finance Committee is proposing that the board approved to be put on the June ballot. Again, this is due in large part to excess carryover funds available due to COVID, unfilled positions. The maintenance director's position was unfilled all year, which was a significant portion of that budget. And so we have some funds left over in the unexpended fund balance that we are asking that we have asked the taxpayers to put into 2 different accounts. So the first one on there, it says article authorizes a transfer to the capital reserve account. Shall the school board be authorized to transfer a transfer of available funds balance, the sum of $750,000 to the capital reserve account? So we're proposing that we take $750,000 of unexpended funds and move it to our capital reserve account. For those that don't know, the capital reserve account can only be expended by the taxpayers, so the taxpayers would get to vote on that again if we were ever to propose to take it out for any sort of project in the future. And it can only be added to by the taxpayers as well, hence the reason it's on this agenda. The second item, shall the school board be authorized to transfer of available funds the sum of $25,000 to the school nutrition program account for any additional incidental or miscellaneous receipts in the interest and for the well-being of the school nutrition program. This idea kind of spawned last year due to us running a negative balance in the food nutrition program. It's a pretty common practice amongst districts throughout the state, and it's basically to supplement the school nutrition program because it's, generally speaking, unsustainable by itself. And so again, due to having excess carryover, neither of these items ask the taxpayers to raise any money They're simply transferring from our unexpended balance to these accounts.
If I could. And just reasoning, like you might say, how the heck do we have this kind of money? It's COVID. Because what ended up happening, as you know, is we didn't fund some positions. We couldn't find like a social worker at the middle school. We had a lot of funds that we didn't use that first year in particular. Pretty much all of your sports, all of your coaching fees, all of your field trips. That just really gave us a pretty quick balance over 2 years. So when we started this current year, we actually had a fund balance of $2,744,978. Now, you had already accounted for some of that because last year when you were building this year's budget, you took $725,000, like you are again this year, from carryover, and you applied it towards the budget. So that reduced that $2,700,000 right off the bat by $725,000. You also had the voters approve transferring $150,000 into the capital reserve account, and you also transferred $84,512, you didn't, the taxpayers did, into getting us back to even with the food service. When we started this year, at the very beginning of when we finished this year, it's going to leave us with a fund balance of $1,785,466. The Finance Committee looked at it and said, you know what, this is the time to take a good chunk of that and apply it towards a capital improvement account, because at some point down the road, you may have a bus garage project, you may have another big project that you have to do in one of your schools, and it's going to lighten the load on the taxpayers if you can say, well, we have X number of dollars set aside. And I believe, and Deb, you probably have the sheet, she's ready to hand it to me, I can tell. If you do apply that $750,000 to the capital improvement account, you're going to have about $1,250,000. 2 for 3 though, that's still going to get you in the Hall of Fame. It's pretty good. And I do want to say she's amazing. So it's been very helpful. We've changed things so many times in the last week that it's been interesting. So to start the year off, for 24, we would have the $1,785,466. We're asking you to approve allowing the taxpayers to vote on transferring $750,000 into the capital improvement account, $25,000 into food service, and then you've also applied $725,000 to carryover. So when the dust settles, you would have $285,466 plus whatever you have left over at the end of this year. And you will have some money at the end of this year as well, because we haven't filled the supervisor position for buildings and grounds. We haven't filled some other positions. We have some unexpended balances. I don't think you're going to be up to $3 million, but you'll have another jump up, and then maybe next year you can put some additional money aside as well. So, you don't want to apply any more carryover than you already are. And honestly, $725,000 is a lot of money to apply to carryover, because at some point, we're not going to have that. And so you want to try to break that down a little bit. We got down to about $600,000 in carryover a few years ago in an attempt to kind of lower that number. And then, we just had all kinds of things happen. So anyway, as it stands right now, if you approve these things that Danny just mentioned, you'd have $285,466 left on what we started the year off with. I would just also say that one of the conversations that the Finance Committee had was, because of still, at the time, they were trying to keep it under 5%. That $25,000 is being transferred out of your unexpended balances. At some point down the road, most school districts ask the voters every year to just spend a little bit extra on food service, so you don't end up in a situation where you go into the red. So that's something to consider down the road. Right now, we're okay, so you don't need to worry about it. But sorry, that's probably a long explanation, but I just wanted to show you that you start off with a balance, and it works its way down. So at the end of this year, you're going to have a pretty low number, plus whatever we don't expend.
And the money in the unexpended account is not money that we can just spend. It has to be It has to be approved by the taxpayers. Scott?
Let me restate what I thought I heard. So we're buying down the tax rate by $725,000 in existing funds, and we're through vote of the district. We're going to propose to designate $750,000 of otherwise undesignated fund balance.
And another 25 for the food service.
But yeah, and then the But that money, so the 725 is going to help fund the cause for FY '24, but the 750 is just, it's a bookkeeping thing to carve it away from undesignated, but there's no earmark on it to spend it yet.
No, the only way it can be spent is through the voter
Another vote.
taxpayers. Yeah. And ideally, the state says, and they relaxed this up until, I mean, it was relaxed for a number of years, but they say that ideally you shouldn't have more than 3% of your general fund budget in undesignated reserve or unallocated reserve.
Are you capped by law in the reserve amounts?
Sorry, say it again?
Does Department of Ed cap you in terms of how much you can reserve?
They recommend 3% of your budget, but they
that was
have
undesignated.
Yeah, I think he means in like the capital reserve account. Is
No,
there a cap?
no, there's no cap.
There's no cap on that, but there is some sort of a policy document or otherwise about fund balance. So it's like a sweeper. So if there's 3% your match, you got to reach in and
State has not enforced that. Your auditors will tell you that you should have enough money to run your school system for 6 months in case you run into a problem.
that's a cash flow issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. The existence of all reserve funds, that cash is available for short-term, to avoid short-term borrowing, I would think. But I don't know.
Not the funds that get transferred over.
So the 750 gets locked up.
Correct. And the only way it can get spent is if the taxpayers have another meeting and approve to spend it.
Even if does the district borrow short-term or not?
No.
Then
We've been lucky. We've never had to do that.
And you can lock up 750 and still not need to use it to cover basically cover shortfall because you're getting your monthly check from the towns.
Correct. We've come close a couple of times, but we've never been to the point where we've had to borrow. In the
It's a
20
fairly
years,
smooth cash
21
flow,
years
I
I've been
think.
superintendent, we've never had to.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, thank you very much.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions on these two proposed warrants? Okay, any other questions on the budget as a whole? And we'll obviously have another chance during the discussion of the agenda items, but
Can I just make one really quick thing? So the other pieces that have to happen after, the budget gets approved is we have to do a mailing. So all the information gets generated into a mailer that goes out to everyone. That has to be received by voters, a certain number of days ahead of the public budget hearing. So we do that, and we do also do the press release and so on. And in the past, I don't think it happened last year, but in the past, the Citizen used to put the whole spreadsheet in the newspaper. So.
and yeah, the public budget hearings in May, and we'll basically be running through this presentation again to the taxpayers that show up. So, all right. With that, we will move to the agenda items. And number 3, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding the superintendent-elect's recommend nominations of principals for Telstar Middle School and High School. Yep. Yeah, if we can just get a motion, just to get it on the table,
What are we making a motion about?
just to hear basically to hear the recommendations. Of
I make a motion to hear the recommendation of the superintendent-elect.
Second. Thank you. Okay.
I just want to say too that technically the superintendent has to make the recommendation, but obviously the superintendent-elect is the person who's going to be working with these folks. So he's making it, and I would back up whatever the recommendation is for you to vote on.
So we'll pass it tomorrow.
Yours.
Wait, so do we have discussion about whether or not we're going to hear this recommendation?
Yes.
And then we need to vote.
No, we don't need to vote.
We do, because I made a motion.
The discussion, we're going to listen to him during the discussion part of the motion. So we wouldn't vote on it until after.
But the motion is to hear the recommendation.
Right.
So we need to vote whether or not we're going to hear it.
Yeah.
You should take a vote.
Okay.
It's a motion and a second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor of hearing the recommendation? Okay, thank you.
It would be afterwards.
Then there would have to be a motion to approve his recommendation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be like a part B, or second follow-up.
Okay.
Thank you. So I have, should we go separate order? I do have recommendations tonight for both middle school and high school principals. We were able to do interviews and the committees were able to come to conclusions. So I have those for you tonight. I'll pass out packets. On the screen. Coming around, you have the application packet in one direction and the recommendation packet in the other direction. The committee recommends for the high school position, John Elliott to be the high school principal for 23-24. We had interest, but only one candidate in the end to interview for the position. We did interviews last week, and the papers went in different directions, sorry. Do you want these separately, or do you want them all at the same time? I guess it's better, or if there's questions. Do you want to do high school first, and if there's questions, and then do it? Okay.
Yeah.
So both contracts will be the same in middle school and high school principal. I'm recommending 2-year contract. First year, $88,500 with admin benefits as they are now, with a 4% increase, which is consistent with the other admin contracts you have, which puts the second year at $92,040, and then we'll be in line with the other contracts to go forward from there. If you approve the 2 principals tonight, we will then move forward with the 6-12 dean replacement advertising in that process, so they can be involved in that process, because it makes more sense to have them at the helm with that, since everyone's working directly. 1 dean for the complex, 1 6-12 dean, which is part of the current budget structure, along with these salaries for the 2 principals. This is all part of the budget without an increase.
Your packet also has the interview questions in it, right?
They are. The interview questions were asked, and the front of the packet shows the interview committee. We did have different interview committees for the middle school versus the high school position, simply because of the focus, separating them back into 2 separate schools. So we had some similar, there were a couple people that are the same for both, but with the focus being for each, trying to separate the 2 buildings back out, we thought it was important to have focus committees for each group. Mr. Elliott's currently been the dean for the last 5 years in the high school and working with staff and students, doing staff observations, and is working on an internship right now under me for finalizing his schooling and his certification. And he's going to have probably 200 hours more than required when all said and done based on the work he's been doing in the district this year under his internship. Learning all the different aspects that you don't know what you don't know until you're doing it and stepping in. So he's even spent some time down the elementary school. So getting the full picture. Do you have any questions?
Is there any questions? If not, we're...
Took the guy 8 years to get a degree. He sounds like my son. I'm looking at it, and I mean, be light, I guess. University of Maine, University of Alaska, a BA, 8 years. Just long time in school. A lot of snow days.
I was going to say, long drive.
It looks great.
So if we want to take action on this, we're going to have to make a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the superintendent-elect's recommendation of John Elliott Jr.
Second.
Let the minutes reflect superintendent-elect and superintendent, just so it's...
Okay.
For the high school principal.
For the high school principal.
2-year contract, 88,592,040, administrative benefits.
Sure.
Scott, you good with that second?
Yes.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Congratulations, John.
Congratulations, John.
And I'll pass around the next packets and we'll pass on at the same time. Here are middle school principal packets put around to you. My recommendation is that Lindsay Lecce, the middle school principal for 23-24, the 2-year contract. We had interest from multiple people. We ended up with one interviewee and one interview. And Mrs. Lecce, who has been in the middle school for 2 years, or one more than me, but and Dean for the last 5 years, step into the principal role starting next year. Same contract and benefits as the high school principal, $88,500 and $92,040 for 2 years. The committee and interview questions are in one packet, the resume is in the second packet. Are there any questions that I can help answer?
If there's no questions, I would entertain a motion for the middle school position.
Motion. Go ahead. Nope, you go for it.
Make a motion to approve the superintendent-elect's recommendation for Lindsay Lecce for Telstar Middle School.
Can you restate
Sure.
the salary for us?
First year, $88,500 with admin benefits and insurance, and second year with a 4% increase for $92,040.
Is that good, Stephanie?
Yes.
Let the minutes reflect superintendent-elect superintendent, just for...
Is there a second on that motion? Aaron, thank you. Any discussion on the motion for this Telstar Middle School principal nomination? All in favor?
Congratulations, Lindsay.
If you don't mind handing the trees forward, we'll
Yeah, they can
recycle
be back.
appropriately. Please, thank you.
All set? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kenny.
Sure thing.
Do you want these or just...
All right. Thank you. With that, we'll move to number 4 on the agenda. To see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the proposed job description for the position of Coordinator of Grant Writing and Special Projects and the appointment of Dr. David Murphy to a part-time 40% one-year contract effective July 1st, 2023. And the Finance Negotiations Committee has a recommendation.
The Finance and Negotiation Committee recommends approval of the proposed job description for the position of Coordinator of Grant Writing and Special Projects and the appointment of Dr. David Murphy to a part-time 40% one-year contract effective July 1st, 2023.
All right, that does not require a second because it's negotiation committee recommendation. So I'll just provide a little bit of background on that, and then you have a copy of the job description. Aaron does. So this conversation around grant writing has kind of surfaced a year or more ago. I know Stephanie, you were a big proponent of it, and Maggie as well. And when we heard that Dave had taken the job at Region 9, I heard from several board members who really wanted to make this a priority to lock Dave into this position or some sort of position in the district because we felt he was an asset to the district. So with that, I took that to the Finance Committee and we discussed some different options and came up with a job description and a proposal that we shared with Dave, and he was on board with, and we're bringing that to you tonight. So maybe with that, Aaron, I'll let you go over the job description a little bit, if you don't mind.
Take
Get that back to you, yeah.
That's a current one. So the position is Coordinator of Grant Writing and Special Projects. It'll be a 40% part-time position. It will report to the Superintendent of Schools and will be responsible for working at the direction of the Superintendent of Schools to provide district support for new and ongoing projects such as, but not limited to, grant writing, identify and pursue additional funding for the district through grant writing on both the state and federal levels, including opportunities for new programs as well as funds to support the continuation and expansion of existing district programs, and facility support. Oversee the ESSER III Honeywell Air Quality Project at CPS, work to help continue the presence of an early learning center in the greater Bethel area, including working with collaborating agencies to meet the necessary financial requirements, licensing processes, and required paperwork to propose a plan to help provide daycare options, review and update to the 10-year district obsolescence plan, consider and propose new initiatives to promote student and district aspiration and growth, and then provide support for future construction projects as needed, and other projects as assigned by the Superintendent of Schools.
So the Finance Committee thought that job description was encompassing enough to bring us in funds, hopefully. We're hoping the position will potentially pay for itself. And the Finance Committee is unanimously recommending this. Again, we think that Dave's an asset to the district, and to keep him on a couple days a week seems to be a wise decision for us. Not only for his historical knowledge, but also, again, for his grant writing capabilities and stuff like that. So, I heard from members of both the Education Committee and the Policy Committee who were in support of this, and that's why the Finance Committee wanted to make sure, since we were meeting weekly, that we got something out to the board as soon as we could. So, any discussion on this? Scott?
I'll speak, and first off, I'm going to vote against the motion. It has nothing to do with Dave Murphy. It has nothing to do with Mark Kenny. But I'm ambivalent. I wish Dave was sticking around as superintendent, but he's not. And now we have a new boss that's come in. And I think that, based on my life experience and my views of management organizations and following and leading, I think Mark Kenny deserves our unequivocal support. And however well intended this action is, and it's a lot of good things to it, and you heard me say already, I think this should be set aside. I think when the new boss comes in, the old boss has to go. And again, it's not about Dave. Dave knows exactly how I feel. We spoke at length the other day, and Danny, we spoke, and I appreciate both your candor both ways. So, but that's where I am. Again, nothing. I'm going to vote against it. I've said my piece, and I will go from there. Thank you very much.
I neglected to mention too that the Finance Committee did incorporate Mark into this conversation to get his support.
And to that effect, I would argue that Mark has a conflict of interest and really can't give it. And no matter how hard things it is, whatever his answer is, it's not admissible in a sense. But that's these are my views. I wouldn't be true to myself. I didn't say what I said. I had to say here now. Thank you very much.
Any other discussion? Maggie?
I think this is a very interesting proposal. I think it's really important I understand exactly what you mean. And I think that it is a tough dynamic for sure. And I also think that this position in and of itself, separate from Dr. Murphy, is a valuable position for our district. And I think that if we can have Dr. Murphy start us off in that direction as Mr. Kenny comes in, then we get more than just a grant writer. We also get as much as of a resource, a historian, institutional knowledge, all of those things. So I think it's an incredibly important and valuable opportunity that we have, and one that I would be interested in keeping, probably, like, for the district long term. I just also wanted to say, I talked to some people about this in terms of, well, you could use Dr. Murphy as an independent consultant rather than a district employee. If we were to do that at an independent consultant rate, we would be paying him about $102,000 a year just for those 16 hours. So for 16 hours a week, we'd be paying about $120,000 a year, $102,000 a year. And so for Dr. Murphy to be willing to use his expertise in this way, I think is pretty invaluable. So.
And just to add, Scott, too, we did try to take your comments into consideration, and part of the job description is that he wouldn't necessarily be in the district office during the day to avoid those sorts of conflicts.
I think that the optics are not good. I think there's a symbology that's not ideal. I think it sends a less than ideal message to the workforce and to the student body. It hurts to say all this stuff, because, and I'm glad Dave's sticking around. When I heard you going to Region 9, that was a good find. I guess I wish he was staying here in the job, but times change, life changes, and we move on. So, but thanks to everybody for hearing me out. Thank you very much.
I guess I do agree with a lot of what Scott's saying. You hand the reins over to someone and you let them do it. And as much as Mr. Murphy has been great, you put your trust in Mr. Kenny, because that's what we've done in the past. And you know, a job description was made, and I didn't see anything in the personnel committee, being a member in that committee, and I would have thought that some kind of job description would have gone to that.
Personnel didn't meet. We actually talked about the position at the last meeting that you did have and received support for it, but this hadn't gotten there because, as you know, we had a meeting that had to be rescheduled. So that's the only reason.
Aaron?
I wouldn't view this as us undermining the superintendent-elect or not trusting, him in a new position. I view it more as support for the full district. We're going to have a new superintendent, a new administrative team, and we still don't have the building and grounds supervisor position filled. A lot of what's listed in this description is stuff that in your day-to-day as superintendent, especially new, you wouldn't necessarily be able to get to. You can't delve into grant writing and such, especially in the first year. And a lot of this does pertain to buildings and groundwork that we don't have anyone in right now and haven't for a year. So I feel this is a very good support to the district, and that there's no better person to essentially start this position than Dave. He's been with us for decades. He knows the district better than anybody, and he has so much to offer us. I think it would be silly not to take advantage of this. But we're okay with creating a job description and not putting it out to anybody. People are okay now.
We talked about that in the Finance Committee. It's either Dave or no one to start, because he can walk in immediately and know what's going on. You can't hire someone they'd have a 1-year learning curve, and it just wouldn't work. And I think it's the smoothest transition we can come up with for the district to transition to a new superintendent while still maintaining Dave in some capacity for his knowledge of the district.
The position is only proposed for 1 year, too.
Right.
Yes, that's right.
And I think the most important part of this for me is the grant writing piece. I think this district relies so heavily on state and federal funding through grant writing, and I hope that through this transitional year we can prove that maybe that position is something we should have indefinitely. And Dave is a wealth of knowledge and knows where to go, who to go to, for what money, and how not to say no. And I think our district has benefited from that his entire career. So,
further discussion?
Well, I just would like to say that I've been on board for 23 years, and I've seen a lot of people come and go. And we should feel very lucky that the ones that we've had for so long still want to stay with us. So that's because, like, believe me, We've had some that came and was gone in 6 months, so.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? 10, 9. And opposed? Nine to 4. Doesn't pass. Jess?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want everybody to know this isn't a position I've jockeyed for. So this is a position that people have asked me to do, and I'll do everything I can to make it successful. And Mr. Kenny and I have had several conversations. I wanted to be the superintendent. I would have told you a couple of years ago that I wanted to be considered for renewal. I don't. I'm really looking forward to stepping completely away from that and trying to do some other things. As Maggie said, for 1 year. And then I think you as a board need to decide whether you want to continue with that position down the road. And in the meantime, hopefully, we can hire a supervisor of buildings and grounds. We just haven't been able to do that yet. So, no hard feelings. I get it completely. And onward and upward.
All right, thank you. Number 5, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the fiscal year 24 MSAD 44 general fund budget as presented, and the Finance Committee has a recommendation.
The Finance Committee recommends approval of the FY24 MSAD 44 general fund budget as presented.
Thank you. Again, no second required. Any further discussion on the budget that we presented earlier? Seeing none, all in favor? 12. And opposed? 2. 12 to 1. All right, number 6. To see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the fiscal year 24 MSAD 44 adult and community education budget as presented, and the Finance Committee has a recommendation on that.
The Finance Committee recommends approval of the FY24 MSAD 44 adult and community education budget as presented.
And again, this budget is separate from the general fund budget, so that's why it's a separate line item. And this is the one that is being proposed to be funded by itself. Any further discussion on the adult ed budget? All in favor? Thank you. And number 7, to see what action the board wishes to take to include 2 additional warrant articles to the fiscal year 24 public budget meeting agenda to transfer $750,000 of unallocated available funds into the capital reserve account and $25,000 to support the food service program.
The Finance and Negotiations Committee recommends inclusion of 2 additional warrant articles to the FY24 public budget meeting agenda to transfer $750,000 of unallocated available funds into the capital reserve account and to $25,000 to support the food service program.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the warrants? All in favor? Thank you. Number 8, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding the April 24th, 2023 Board of Directors meeting. And again, we said we'd look into this later. That meeting is tentatively scheduled in case the budget for some reason does not pass the board and we need to meet again. So at this point, we would recommend we cancel that meeting and we will meet again on May 8th at 6:30 here.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. Any discussion on canceling the April 24th board meeting? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. And would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you.